Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today I'm talking about Google because I'm asking the question, when is Google shaping perception and when is it accurate with facts? And this new warning from them may actually help answer that question. Now, this is coming primarily from The Verge and Recode, but before The Verge, people have accused Google of shaping news to align with whatever Google's political beliefs are. And to be fair, given who Google is and what they do, they would have the capability to do that. But I am not going to sit here and claim that they do or they don't do this. I'm going to leave that one up to you. This new bit of news, though, I have to say, will help, I think, bolster the argument on both sides. One, that Google could be potentially politically manipulating the news, and I'm going to explain why after. But this could also be seen as Google simply trying to be as accurate as possible in the moment. So let's start with what we know thanks to The Verge. Google will now tell their users when search results are rapidly changing around a breaking story. Some searches will now bring up a warning that, and I quote, "It looks like these results are changing quickly," and a subheading will explain that, and I quote, "If the topic is new, it can sometimes take time for results to be added by reliable sources." In a blog post, the company suggests that users might want to check back later when it basically has more results to share, when Google has more results to share. Now, the notice is initially appearing on US-based language results, and I quote, "When a topic is rapidly evolving and a range of sources hasn't yet weighed in." Google will expand the tool's presence to other markets in the coming months as well. And to quote Google in general, "While Google search will always be there with the most useful results we can provide, sometimes the reliable information you're searching for just isn't online yet. This can be particularly true for breaking news or emerging topics when the information that's published first may not be the most reliable." Now, Recode reported on this feature yesterday, following up on a tweet from the Stanford Internet Observatory research Renee DiResta. A sample of Google's basically search screenshot features a query, and I quote the query, "UFO film traveling 106 miles an hour," an apparent reference to a recent tabloid story about a 2016 UFO sighting in Wales in the UK. Currently, that precise search result does not actually include that warning, but and I quote the researcher, "Someone had gotten this police report video released out in Wales, and it's a little bit hard, but a bit of it's a little bit of press coverage, but there's still not a lot about it." And that again is according to Google's search public liaison Danny Sullivan, and talking to Recode, and he said, and I quote again, "But many people are probably searching for it. They may be going around on social media, so we can tell it's starting to trend. And we can also tell that it's there's not a lot of necessarily great stuff out there, and we also think that maybe new stuff will come along." Now, that just, funny example aside, Google has inadvertently showcased incorrect information after mass shooting events where early official reports are often inaccurate and deliberate misinformation is common. This is sometimes exacerbated by quote-unquote data voids or keywords that have few search results that can be easily hijacked by bad actors. This warning won't necessarily stop bad content from surfacing, and it's not clear exactly how Google determines a sufficient range of sources, but it could remove some of the false legitimacy that high Google placement can confer on early, unreliable search results. And I think that's a very true statement. Oftentimes, the first search result or so, or the first five search results or so, is usually taken as gospel, as Google tends to prioritize those high traffic sites, and oftentimes we think those may be legitimate, oftentimes they are not. I think this is also, we see this, just on and on. So for example, I remember specifically in September 11th, and those of us that were alive and conscious that day here in the United States, remember what we were doing, but we got reports that ended up being inaccurate of possible bombs in front of other, buildings or federal buildings, and there was a lot of misinformation going around, that day. It was a pretty wild day in terms of information and news, beyond obviously the footage that we saw of the planes hitting the tower, hitting the field in Pennsylvania, and then also hitting the Pentagon as well. So that is, I think, a really good example of this. And now, in the age of virality, where we have basically sources that are putting out demonstrably false information or possibly disinformation, if those are the ones that, let's say, the blogosphere or an ecosystem on one side of the political spectrum gloms onto and then starts sharing and spreading it and making it viral, that doesn't make it true. It just makes it widely seen. And I think Google is trying to combat this. Now, By virtue of that, I think Google could be accused of manipulating search results in the sense that they're looking at this source and they're saying, well, Jim Bob's news page is not quite the same as, a Reuters or an Associated Press or the BBC, or, take your news source, and therefore, as let's say Reuters or whoever is slower to update because they're actually fact checking, trying to do their homework on this, as opposed to somebody that is putting out, whatever thing they find as soon as possible, and that's catching on like wildfire. That gives Google the ability to slow down and say, hey, wait a second, we're reprioritizing this because we know that major publications are going to do their homework, have a vetting process, have editors in a way that somebody just writing a blog can put out whatever they want on whatever platform they're using, and if they've got a following, that's going to explode. And I think that's something that's true. As you know, if you follow me or watch me or whatever that is, I publish for both Forbes and also Smerconish with CNN, and I cannot simply upload whatever I want to either one of those sites and hit publish. I have to go through an editor that is going to basically take notes, say, hey, wait a second, this link doesn't, the data that this link is supposed to support doesn't actually support the data. You need to redo this. It's those kinds of things that we're dealing with or we're talking about, and that keeps everybody honest. I have to prove, that I've got what I've got. I have to prove that I'm bolstering, let's say, my opinion with facts that match that by virtue of reporting from top news sources. And so I think that's an important thing that is out there. And by virtue of that, I'm not publishing immediately. Sometimes it takes me days or potentially weeks to publish an article, especially if it's an opinion piece. And so by virtue of that, that's keeping me honest, but it's also keeping the platforms essentially indemnified from any, missteps or miscalculations I make or anything hyperbolic. So, if I publish an article that basically says burn the world down and I don't have an editor there and I publish that potentially makes them look bad, right? And so by virtue of that, I think that's something that Google is trying to combat. They're trying to thwart, they're trying to slow down that virality that we see explode on social media or explode on this. And their automatic search ranking is going to say, oh my God, look at all the incoming, back and forth from this specific site. And this specific site is on, whatever controversial topic it is. And so it starts raising through the ranks as it gets more and more traffic. Google sees this, Google starts placing it higher. Even though, let's say, they don't have human eyeballs on it, now they're saying they're going to have a process which says, wait a second, we're seeing all of these changes. We're seeing this stuff come out. There's no real primary sources just yet. They're a couple hours behind in their reporting. Let's slow this down. Let's understand. And so, again, you can accuse them of manipulating the news by that. In that sense, they are, whether it's for good or bad. I'm going to let you decide, but that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And please feel free to make anything I do go viral. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.